Imagine wood pressing into your spine, not metaphorically, actually. Your face shoved into cold earth, dirt in your mouth, and above you, above your suffocating body, men are laughing, drinking, eating roasted meat while your ribs crack under their weight. That sound you hear? That wet, desperate gasping? That's a Russian prince. 1223. Battle of Khalkha River. And that's not even in the top 10. This isn't history class. This is what happens when an empire decides mercy is weakness and victory is just the beginning of the nightmare. The Mongols didn't conquer land. They unmade civilizations. And after every battle, every single one, they had rituals, ceremonies, traditions that turned human suffering into something organized, something almost sacred to them. And number 20, that's where we start. But I'm telling you now, what comes later. Number 7, number 3, you're going to wish you stopped here. 20, the loot. Surman, picture this. A city is burning. Smoke so thick you taste it in your throat. Thousands dead in the streets. And the Mongol army? They're standing perfectly still. Nobody moves. Nobody touches a single piece of gold, because Genghis Khan's law, the yasa, was absolute. You grab before the ceremony, they cut your head off. No warning, no appeal. Just a blade and the wet sound of your body hitting dirt. So everything gets laid out. Silks from China, gold plates from Persia, horses, weapons, livestock and women, young ones, old ones. Girls who haven't bled yet, they're lined up right next to the silver. Same sorting process, same distribution. The Khan takes first pick, always. Then his generals. Then the rank-and-file soldiers who survived. Even the families of dead warriors got a share. Widows received slaves they'd never met. Orphans received girls their own age. Sounds almost fair, right? Like some twisted socialist empire? Here's what they don't tell you in textbooks. At Zhongdu in 1215, modern-day Beijing, the Mongols stripped that city so completely that the fires from the destruction burned for 30 days. A month of flames. The smell of burning flesh drifted for miles. But the loot ceremony, that was the polite part. What comes next is where your stomach starts turning 19. The prayer to Tengri. Every Mongol victory belonged to the sky, their god. Tengri lived up there in the endless blue. And every time they crushed an army, every time they watched a city fall, they believed with absolute certainty that he had chosen them, that their swords were just extensions of divine will. So after every win, the Khan would climb the highest ground he could find, take off his hat, drape his belt around his neck, a symbol of submission, and then bow, 9 times, face in the dirt. Mare's milk poured onto the earth as an offering. Sometimes this went on for days. And here's where it gets terrifying. They weren't just saying thank you. They believed Tengri had given them a mission. Rule every single human being on this planet. All 24 million square kilometers of their eventual empire. That was proof that God wanted them to keep going. Fighting the Mongols wasn't just a military mistake. It was fighting against God himself. Think about what that does to a soldier's mind. When you genuinely believe the creator of the universe wants you to win, what won't you do? What line won't you cross? Genghis Khan spent 3 days alone on a sacred mountain before launching his war against China in 1211. No food, no water, just him and the sky. When he came down, there wasn't a flicker of doubt in his eyes. The sky had spoken, and that kind of certainty, it makes an army unstoppable. It also makes them completely incapable of mercy. Why would you show mercy to someone God wants dead? 18. Walking Dead shields. This one is going to crawl under your skin and stay there. After the Mongols took a city, after the initial slaughter, they didn't kill everyone. Not yet. They rounded up survivors. Old men with shaking hands, women clutching babies, farmers who'd never held a weapon, teenagers who pissed themselves from fear, and they marched them forward, toward the next city on the target list. When defenders on those walls saw the Mongol army approaching, they did what any soldier would do. They fired arrows, released volleys, dropped burning oil, and they watched their own mothers die first. The Mongols used this constantly against the Khwarezmian Empire from 1219 to 1221. Historian Giovanni, a Persian who actually witnessed some of this horror, described prisoner columns that stretched for literal miles. A river of broken humanity shuffling toward the next massacre. If you slowed down, sword through your back. If you tried to run, same thing. If you collapsed from exhaustion, They left you twitching in the mud while the column marched over your body. Now imagine you're in that column. You survived a massacre. Your home is ash behind you. You watched your husband get dragged away. Your children are somewhere in this crowd of terrified strangers. And now you're a shield, a meat barrier for the army that destroyed everything you ever loved. Your only prayer? That the next city surrenders before the arrows start flying. Because if they don't, you die first. And the people on those walls? They're the ones who killed you. The psychological warfare here is so elegant it makes me sick. The kill quota here's where the organization gets truly demonic. After a city fell, Mongol commanders didn't just let chaos explode. They didn't just say kill whoever you want. That would be inefficient. That would be messy. No, they handed out assignments. Each warrior, each individual soldier, was given a specific number, a quota of human lives to extinguish before sundown. At Urgench in 1221, an army of roughly 20,000 Mongol soldiers each received the same order. Kill 24 civilians. Do the math. That's nearly 500,000 people. Executed after the battle was already won. After the city had surrendered. After any military threat was eliminated. And here's the part that freezes my blood. The bodies were counted. Numbers were reported back to generals like quarterly earnings. Soldiers who didn't hit their quota faced punishment. Maybe they lost their share of the loot. Maybe worse. The message was clear. This is your job. Do your job. This wasn't rage. This wasn't battle frenzy. This was an organized, bureaucratic system of elimination designed to make sure rebellion could never take root in that soil again. Cut the population down so far that survivors spend all their energy just surviving, not planning revenge. Once the quota was met, the commanders packed up and moved on next city. Same system, same paperwork. Genocide as administrative task 16. Molten silver in the eyes. Let's get personal for a minute. Genghis Khan sends a trade caravan, 450 merchants, to the Khwarezmian Empire. Honest traders, camels loaded with goods, peaceful mission. The governor of a city called Otrar, a man named Inalchuk, murders every single one of them, slits their throats, steals everything. When Genghis Khan hears about this, he does something remarkable. He doesn't immediately declare war. He sends an envoy, a diplomat, 3 men carrying a simple message. Hand over the governor who committed this crime, and we can avoid bloodshed. Inalchuk kills the envoy too. For the Mongols, killing an ambassador was the single worst crime in existence. It broke what they called the Great Principle, the sacred idea that a man's word is binding, that messengers are untouchable. So when the Mongols finally took Otrar in 1220, they didn't just kill Inalchuk, they saved him for last. Made him watch while his city burned, made him listen while his people screamed. And then, according to Persian sources, multiple sources, they held him down, pried his eyes open, and poured molten silver directly into his eye sockets, into his ears too. The silver cooled inside his skull. The message traveled faster than any army could march. Kill our messengers, and we will make your death something people whisper about 800 years from now. 800 years later, here we are, still whispering 15. The carpet crushed the Mongols had a spiritual rule that sounds almost respectful, until you understand what it actually meant in practice. Noble blood must never touch the ground. Spilling royal blood would anger the spirits, curse the entire empire, bring bad fortune down on everyone. So when they captured kings and princes and caliphs, they got creative. After Baghdad fell in 1258, and we'll come back to Baghdad, trust me. Hulagu Khan had the last Abbasid caliph, a man named al-Mustasim, rolled up inside a thick carpet, like a piece of furniture. Wrapped tight, then Mongol horses trampled over him, again and again, bones crushing, organs bursting. But inside that carpet, no blood touched the earth. Some historians say soldiers beat him through the carpet with their fists instead. Either way, the end result was identical. The highest-ranking religious leader in the Islamic world died suffocating in his own blood inside a rug, and the Mongols considered this the respectful way to kill a leader. Let that settle in your chest for a second. This was them being polite. This was them following spiritual protocol. Now imagine what they did when they weren't trying to respectful 14. The feast on living men. Back to where we started, Kalka River. 1223. Generals Subutai and Jebe, Two of the greatest military minds in human history just destroyed a Russian army of 80,000 men with only 20,000 Mongol riders. The battle was a masterpiece of tactics, feigned retreats, perfect coordination, brutal efficiency. But it's what happened after that sticks in your throat. Several Russian princes were captured alive, including Mstislav of Kiev, a man who thought his royal blood made him untouchable. The Mongols laid them face down on the cold ground, cheek pressed into dirt. Then they stacked heavy wooden boards on top of their bodies, platform built from the very carts that had carried Mongol supplies across the steppe. And then the generals sat on those boards. They spread out food, poured drinks, and threw a victory feast. The princes underneath were being crushed, suffocated, their ribs snapping one by one, the weight pressing air out of their lungs. And the sound, the wet, desperate gasping, mixed with the sound of clinking cups and laughter above them. The feast lasted hours, the screaming did not. By the time the generals stood up and stretched their legs, everything underneath those boards was silent. And once again, no royal blood spilled. The wood did the killing. The Mongols just ate dinner. Multiple historians recorded this event. It actually happened, and in the Mongol world, it wasn't even considered unusual. It was just Tuesday. Think about what kind of mind can eat a meal while human beings die inches beneath your boots. What kind of culture produces men like that? 13. Skulls pyramids. If you were approaching a Mongol-conquered city from a distance, you'd see them before you smelled the smoke. Towers, pyramids, but not made of stone, made of heads. A single arrow fired from the walls of Nishapur killed Genghis Khan's son-in-law during the siege. One lucky shot, one dead royal. When the Khan's daughter found out, a woman named, who had just lost her husband, she reportedly demanded the complete destruction of every living thing in that city. Every breathing creature, every dog, every cat, every child hiding under their mother's bed. The Mongols delivered. Persian historian Rashid al-Din claimed more than 1 million people were killed at Nishapur. Modern estimates are lower, but honestly, the exact number doesn't matter. What matters is the ritual. Severed heads were collected, sorted, men in one pile, women in another, children in a third. The heads were stacked into pyramids right outside the city gates. Neat, organized, architectural. They stood there for Mughals. Travelers on the Silk Road would see them from miles away. The message was unmistakable. This is what happens when you resist. This is what happens when you kill one of ours. Turn back now, or your head joins the pile. Later, a conqueror named Tamerlane, who saw himself as Genghis Khan's spiritual heir, perfected this tradition. After sacking Baghdad in 1401, he arranged 90,000 heads into 120 towers. At Isfahan, 70,000 dead became 35 pyramids of bone. The skulls would stare out at the horizon with empty eye sockets. A warning that outlasted the stench of rotting flesh. And the thing is, it worked. Cities that saw those pyramids, they surrendered immediately. If your stomach is turning right now and you're still watching, you understand something about yourself. You're drawn to the darkness, the parts of history they sanitize for classrooms. Hit subscribe. Hit the bell, because the top 12, number 7, number 4, that's where this list stops being about what they did to enemies and starts being about what they did to the very earth itself. 12. Drowning cities alive. The Mongols didn't just burn cities. They drowned them. After defeating the Tangut kingdom around 1209, Mongol engineers, and yes, they had engineers, brilliant ones, directed entire rivers toward fortified positions. Imagine watching a wall of water slowly creeping toward your home. No way to stop it, no way to run fast enough. But the real nightmare came after Baghdad fell in 1258. The Mongols destroyed the ancient irrigation systems that had kept Mesopotamia green for thousands of years. We're talking about the cradle of civilization, the land between two rivers, the place where agriculture was invented. Canals were wrecked, underground water channels called kanats, engineering marvels that had functioned since ancient Sumerian times. Cops. Without them, farmland turned to dust. Orchards withered, wells ran dry. Survivors of the massacre now faced years of famine. Not months, years, watching their children's bellies swell from starvation, watching their elders waste away. Some of those irrigation networks weren't rebuilt until the 20th century. That's 700 years of agricultural damage from a single decision. When Pope Innocent IV's envoy travelled through Kiev in 1246, a city that once held tens of thousands of souls, he found fewer than 200 houses still standing. The streets were empty. The markets were silent. The Mongols weren't just killing people. They were killing the future of entire regions. 11. Artisan kidnapping. Not everyone died after a Mongol victory. The empire needed skilled hands. Before any massacre started, officers combed through the captured population, looking for engineers, blacksmiths, doctors, weavers, astrologers, anyone with a skill the empire could use. These people were pulled out of the crowd while their neighbors were slaughtered around them, watched their families get cut down, heard their children screaming. And then they were marched away, thousands of miles. Persian engineers shipped to China. Chinese siege builders dragged to Persia. The skills went wherever the Khan pointed his finger. A human supply chain stretching across the largest contiguous empire in world history. Think about what that felt like. Your city is burning. Everyone you love is dead or about to be. And you're being kept alive because you know how to forge metal. The siege weapons you build tomorrow will destroy cities just like yours. The bridges you design will carry Mongol armies to slaughter more people who look like you. Many of these artisans never returned home. They died in foreign lands, speaking languages they never learned, buried in soil that wasn't theirs, and their children, raised as Mongols, never knowing what their parents had lost. 10. The 3-day return. This one is pure psychological evil. After sacking a city, the Mongol army would ride away, banners disappearing over the horizon, hoofbeats fading into silence, survivors hiding in wells, in basements, in sewers, under piles of corpses. They'd wait, hold their breath, count the hours, and then they'd crawl out, thinking they made it, thinking God had spared them, hugging each other, crying with relief. 3 days later, the Mongols came back. Every person who came out of hiding was found and killed, every single one. They knew exactly what they were doing. This was a design system, a trap baited with false hope. At Merv in 1221, historian Rashid al-Din recorded that more than 700,000 people were killed during the initial assault. The 3-day return caught thousands more. The Mongols understood human behavior better than any army of that era. They knew people would hide. They knew they'd come out after a few days of silence. They knew hope was the thing that would kill them. There was no outsmarting this army. They'd already thought 3 steps ahead of your survival instinct. 9. Suing a person shut. This one makes my skin crawl every time I read the sources. Fatima was a high-ranking advisor to Turagani Khatun, the woman who ruled the Mongol Empire after Ögedei Khan died. A powerful woman in a world of powerful men. She had enemies. Lots of them. When Turagani's own son turned against her, Fatima became the target. They dragged her out, interrogated her for days, beat her, burned her flesh with hot irons. But they couldn't spill her blood. Noble blood. The same spiritual rule, so they got creative. They sewed every opening in Fatima's body completely shut. Every orifice, every wound, everything sealed tight. Then they wrapped her in layers of felt, thick, suffocating felt, to make sure no fluids could escape, and then they threw her, still alive, still conscious, still feeling everything, into a river. The logic behind this? By sealing the body, no blood would touch the water or the earth. The spirits wouldn't be disturbed. The victim just disappeared. No trace, no pollution, no cosmic consequences. The cruelty wasn't the point. The cruelty was the method. The point was spiritual cleanliness. Imagine drowning while every opening in your body is sewn shut. The panic, the absolute horror of it. Point 8. The humans sorting line after every conquest. The surviving population went through what can only be described as a sorting ceremony. Line up, all of you. Strong men became forced laborers, broken down, worked until their bodies gave out. Young women, the pretty ones, the fertile ones, were distributed among warriors and commanders, sometimes as wives, usually as something worse. Children were pulled from their mothers' arms and adopted into Mongol families, raised to forget they were ever anything else. Their language beaten out of them, their names replaced, their gods forgotten. The kingdom of Goryeo, modern-day Korea, was forced to hand over 10,000 otter skins, 20,000 horses, 10,000 bolts of silk, and thousands of children and young women as slaves. Every single tribute collection, over and over, For decades, captured enemy soldiers got the worst deal. They marched at the front of the next battle, forced to fight their own people, their own brothers. Refuse, dead. Fight, you help conquer your homeland. There was no right answer, no escape, just different flavors of Hellpoint 7. The River of Iron K, Baghdad, 1258. Hulagu Khan's forces took the city after a siege. Between 200,000 and 800,000 people died in a 7-day rampage. The Tigris River ran red with blood, but that's not what historians still mourn. The Mongols took the entire contents of the House of Wisdom, Beit al-Hikmah, and threw it into the river. Every single manuscript, every scroll, every priceless work. This was one of the greatest libraries the world has ever known. Texts on mathematics, astronomy, medicine, philosophy, literature, works from Greek scholars that existed nowhere else, Persian poetry, Indian treatises, Arab scientific breakthroughs, hundreds of years of accumulated human knowledge, the intellectual heritage of multiple civilizations. All of it. Into the water. Eyewitnesses said the river ran black with ink for days, the dissolved knowledge of centuries staining the water. Fish washed up dead on the banks, the smell of ink and death mixed together. If you burn a city, people can rebuild it. If you destroy their knowledge, you erase who they were. Baghdad had been the intellectual capital of the world, the center of learning, the place where scholars from 3 continents came to study. After 1258, it was ruins and ash, and it never fully recovered. Not intellectually, not culturally. The Mongols didn't just kill people in Baghdad. They killed IDAS 6, the blood oath ceremony. After major victories, Mongol commanders didn't just celebrate. They renewed their bonds. In blood, officers gathered and poured fermented mare's milk, called kumis, onto the earth while swearing allegiance to the Khan. 9 cups, 9 oaths. 9 was the sacred number, representing spiritual completeness. But in the deeper version, the version most outsiders never saw, warriors sliced open their palms, mixed their blood with the milk, and drank it together, the Anda ceremony. Blood brotherhood. Genghis Khan himself had performed it with his childhood friend Jamuka, years before they became enemies. Years before Jamuka's betrayal led to one of the bloodiest civil wars in Mongol history. After great victories, this ritual reminded commanders of 2 things. Their bonds were sacred, sealed in blood and milk, and the price of betrayal was death. Not just yours, your whole bloodline. You swore with blood, you drank with brothers. Break that oath, and the sky itself would notice. In Mongol belief, Tengri watched everything. Every broken promise was an insult to the divine order. And divine punishment? That was worse than any execution a human could devise. 5. Catapulting plague corpsessa Mongol army under Jani Beg was besieging the port city of Kaffa on the Black Sea. Genoese traders inside, thick walls. The siege was going nowhere, months of stalemate. Then the Black Plague swept through the Mongol camp. Soldiers started dying, fast, their lymph nodes swelling into black lumps, fever cooking their brains, vomiting blood, dying in their own filth. Most Aussies would retreat, regroup, try again later. The Mongols loaded the plague-infected corpses onto catapults, rotting, diseased bodies, still warm, still contagious, and launched them over the city walls. Imagine standing on those walls and watching dead flesh rain down on your city, knowing what those bodies carried, knowing there was no way to stop it. The plague spread inside Kaffa instantly, fleeing survivors. Genoese traders who thought they'd escaped carried it onto ships bound for Italy. From there, it ripped across Europe like fire through dry grass. The Black Death killed between 75 and 200 million people, roughly 1/3 of Europe. Gone, entire villages empty, fields unharvested, the social order of a continent shattered. Would the plague have reached Europe eventually? Probably. Trade routes existed, rats on ships would have spread it, but the deliberate weaponization of diseased corpses, launching death over walls as a military tactic, that might be the single deadliest post-battle decision in all of human history. 4. The linchpin test this one is cold, calculated, methodical. After Genghis Khan crushed the Tatar tribes, the same tribes that had poisoned his father when he was a boy, he held a council with his generals. One question on the table: what do we do with the survivors? The answer was chilling in its simplicity. Every Tatar male would be stood next to the linchpin of a cartwheel, that metal pin that holds the wheel to the axle. It sits at roughly the height of a 3-year-old child. Anyone taller than that pin was executed on the spot. Men, teenage boys, even older children who'd grown too tall. Anyone shorter was spared, enslaved, distributed among Mongol families to be raised as Mongols. This wasn't a split-second decision made in battle rage. This was a calculated ritual of tribal erasure, performed days after the fighting was over. Cold, deliberate, final. Within a single generation, the Tatar identity ceased to exist. The men were dead. The boys who survived grew up speaking Mongol, living as Mongols, marrying Mongols, never knowing what they were, never knowing their real names. An entire people wiped off the earth, not through a single massacre, through a Miyasashumana. Think about standing in that line, watching your son measured against a piece of metal, knowing that if he's grown too much this year, you'll watch him die before they kill you 2-3. Killing the land itself, this might not sound as immediately violent as skull pyramids or sewing people shut, but in terms of body count over time, it was far, far worse. After conquering Central Asia and Mesopotamia, the Mongols systematically destroyed the underground water channels called khanats. These were engineering marvels, tunnels that brought water from mountain aquifers to farmland in the desert. They'd functioned for thousands of years. Since ancient Sumerian times, the Mongols collapsed them, intentionally, methodically. Without irrigation, farmland became desert. Orchards died. Wells ran dry. The total population of Persia reportedly dropped from 2.5 million to just 250,000. Not just from massacres, from the famine that followed. Years of starvation. Mothers watching their children's eyes go hollow. Baghdad's irrigation network didn't fully recover until the 20th century. 700 years of damage from decisions made in the 1200s. The Mongols didn't just kill people. They killed the earth that fed them. They broke the relationship between humans and the land. And that kind of destruction, it outlasts empires. It outlasts memory. It becomes the new normal. Generations born into a desert that their great-grandparents knew as gardens point to. The Mol Baliyade Ularation, the Mongols, had a formal designation for cities that broke their word, that resisted after being offered surrender, that killed an envoy or ambassador, Mol Balia Bard City. Once that label was applied, the rules changed entirely. No mercy, no negotiations, no survivors. Not even looters among the Mongol soldiers were allowed to take plunder. Everything and everyone was to be destroyed, erased, wiped clean. At Bamiyan in 1221, a Mongol prince, Genghis Khan's favorite grandson, was killed during the siege, shot by an arrow from the walls. When the Khan heard, he declared the city Mol Balia. Every living creature inside was killed. Every dog, every cat, every bird in its nest. He forbade his own soldiers from taking anything. No gold, no silk, no slaves. He wanted nothing from this place to survive. He reportedly ordered that no person ever live on that spot again. The ruins of Bamiyan sat abandoned for generations, empty, silent, a scar on the earth. The name Mol Balaya became the most feared designation on the continent. Cities that received it weren't defeated. They were erased from existence. And the fact that the Mongols had a formal Name process for total annihilation, that's what separates this from every other act of medieval warfare. This was policy, bureaucratic genocide. The worst thing humans can do to each other, reduced to a checkbox on a commander's list. Chinese census records show the population dropped from 120 million before the Mongol invasion to roughly 60 million after. Half the population. Gone. That's the scale of destruction we're talking about. 1. The Sikret Burial Massacre. When Genghis Khan died in 1227, his empire covered 9 million square miles, roughly the size of Africa. He ruled over an estimated quarter of the world's population. More land than anyone in history. More power than any human had ever held, and his followers were determined that his resting place would never be found. A select group of soldiers carried his body back across the Mongolian steppe, moving only at night, avoiding all known routes. And every single person they passed along the way was killed. Merchant caravans, nomadic families, hunters, travelers. Anyone unlucky enough to cross paths with that funeral procession. Thousands died just because they saw the body passing by. After the burial, the soldiers who dug the grave were killed by another group of soldiers. Then those soldiers were killed too. Layer after layer of execution to bury the secret, Horses were stampeded over the burial site, thousands of hooves pounding the earth flat, erasing any trace of disturbed ground. Some accounts say a river was diverted to flow over the location, water covering the grave forever. Nearly 800 years have passed. Modern expeditions with satellite technology, ground-penetrating radar, teams of archaeologists, all searching, nobody has found it. The grave of the man who conquered more of the planet than anyone in history remains completely hidden. He destroyed civilizations across 2 continents, reshaped the entire world map. A Carnegie Institution study found that the Mongol conquests killed so many people that 700 million tons of carbon were scrubbed from the atmosphere as forests regrew on empty land. And then, the man behind it all vanished as completely as the cities he burned. The cost of that vanishing was measured in blood. Thousands killed to protect one man's eternal rest. One man who had ordered the deaths of millions. And that might be the most Mongol thing of all. 20 rituals, 20 windows into a mindset that most of us can't comprehend. An empire that turned victory into an art form of terror. A culture that believed God himself had chosen them to rule the world, and acted accordingly. If you made it this far, you understand something. You're not just curious about history, you're drawn to the parts that make other people look away. The parts that reveal what humans are actually capable of when no one stops them. Mercy was weakness, terror was policy, the sky was watching. Hit subscribe, hit the bell, because there's more where this came from. Much more. And if you think this was dark, wait until you see what the Assyrians did.